Hi everyone, I've really been looking forward to today. I love connecting with like-minded people, so I look forward to meeting you throughout the day. And I'm also excited to have a crack up on stage talking about my story or some of my story in the hope that you take at least one thing to help in your journey. So as Raf mentioned, I've just taken on a challenge of growing a new business, which is called EnviroDNA. It's a science-based business and we're a for-purpose business. And to help bring it to life and give you a bit of a sense of what I'm getting my hands dirty with at the moment, I've got a really quick little animation for you to explain the science that sits at the heart of what we do at EnviroDNA. So I'm going to cue video. And this is a bit of a work in progress. We've just pulled this together, but it will give you the idea of what we're about.
Imagine if, from just a drop of water or a speck of dust, we could detect any living thing. We now can, thanks to environmental DNA, or eDNA for short. All creatures leave traces of DNA in their surrounding environment via skin cells, hair, scales, anything really. And this is where the magic happens. Scientists have worked out how to extract this DNA from the environment and use it to identify the animal, plant or organism that left it behind. We start in the field collecting samples such as water from rivers, lakes, estuaries, dams, you name it. Next, the lab coat goes on and eDNA is extracted. The unique sequence of each DNA molecule is analysed for matches against a database of species. And once we get a single or multiple species match, bingo! We then map which species were found where. So from a simple sample, we can determine what is present within the broader environment, making the often invisible visible, making the often cryptic species easy to find. With eDNA, we no longer need to see, hear or catch something. eDNA is a valuable tool for those working to protect our ecosystems. We can more easily monitor native species like the popular angling fish, the Murray cod, and the threatened dwarf galaxis. We can also monitor invasive species like disease-carrying mosquitoes. Efficiently and effectively identifying what is in our environment, eDNA allows us to better manage and protect Australia's fragile biodiversity.
Yeah, very cringeworthy, hard to listen to my own voice knowing that you're all listening to it as well. But that gives you a bit of a sense of what sits at the heart of what we do at EnviroDNA, and it's really scientific, it's really technical, and that's posed a challenge for me, someone coming from a business background, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I've only been there, and I've only recently partnered with two other guys, scientists, to start growing EnviroDNA. So I've been there for 8 months now, so pretty new, pretty early days in terms of my journey there. And I made the decision to take on this new challenge, to leave my job that I was doing prior to that, which was, Raf mentioned it before, an inventiologist at Inventium. So funnily enough, I used to work here. I have run workshops in this very room before, so it was very weird coming back up the stairs 8 months later. And an inventiologist is essentially an innovation consultant. So I was working for Inventium, the space that we're in now, and that posed some great opportunities for me. But I made the tough decision to take on this new challenge with EnviroDNA. And I want to talk about, I guess, what led to that decision. And I want to talk about worldview just quickly, because really it's my worldview that ended up leading me to take on this new challenge. So, and actually, before I dive into that, just quickly to let you know how I'm going to structure my talk. First part is going to be on this concept of worldview and what my worldview is and what's led to it. And the second part is going to be looking at mapping out the EnviroDNA business model and talking through some of the key challenges and learnings that I've had so far. And in doing so, giving you a tool, a business model and innovation tool that you might be able to take away as well. So, starting with that worldview. This is me. And I'm going to explain 3 key things that shape my worldview. So what is it? What is worldview? Really, in a nutshell, it is how we each interpret reality. And it's what we believe. The things that you can sit down and say, I believe this and I believe that. And ideally, our worldviews should be closely connected to the things that we're doing if we're really being true to ourselves. And our worldviews guide the types of decisions that we're making in the world. So I want to take you through a reflective exercise that I did for myself, which you might like to do, that I found quite powerful in reconnecting with what my worldview is and what I believe. So I sat down and I thought, okay, what is my worldview about? And what are the key things of my past that has led to that? I've got some artifacts for you, just for a bit of show and tell. It's a bit of fun to bring to life some of those key elements. So the first one here is this book, Australia's Biodiversity by Andrew J. Beattie. So I recently read this book, but I was actually given this book over 20 years ago by my stepdad when I was around the age of 10. I didn't actually read it back then, surprisingly enough, when I was 10, but I've read it now. I found it in an old box of books a few months ago, and obviously very related to what I'm doing now, and came in really, really handy to helping explain the science of biodiversity to someone who really is a non-scientist. And there's a note in the front here from my stepdad who gave it to me. Just thought I'd read it out, bit of fun. To my darling Helen, in appreciation of the efforts she has made to keep her room tidy and to be polite and considerate of others. Love from Rob. So that was a note from my stepdad when I was about 10 years old. And I guess the point of bringing this book out is that it demonstrates, and it's a symbol of where my passion for the environment first started, with my family and my upbringing. So our holidays were camping holidays, we're going down to the beach, bushwalking. We moved to a hobby farm when I was 12 years old. So I was constantly immersed in, watching the leaves change colour, looking down holes and seeing spiders down holes and watching the kangaroos in the paddock. So I've just grown this love of the environment. And over the years, that has led to a belief that humans cause unnecessary harm to the environment. And I believe that we should be having a positive impact on the environment. So that's something that's really strong in my worldview. So, positive impact environment. Okay, next artifact. This bag of carrots. So Raf did touch on it slightly before, this idea of being a head carrot, so I'll tell you the story. It relates to the phrase of use carrot, not stick. So taking a positive influence rather than a negative influence. And I studied business at university, business entrepreneurship, and I had this idea I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 25, yes. But thankfully, by my last year of uni, I realised that there was a lot more to life than just becoming a millionaire. And I decided that I really wanted to apply my business skills to the area that was meaningful to me, the environment. So I went out there trying to figure out where is my place in the world. And I came across this really innovative concept over in San Francisco called Carrot Mob. And what Carrot Mob is about positively influencing businesses to make environmental changes or socially responsible changes to their practices. I thought this is great. I'm going to bring this to Melbourne. So I became the head carrot here in Melbourne. And what we did, just in a nutshell, is we'd go around to local businesses and we'd get them to compete against each other as to who could do the most good. And whoever committed to doing the most good and making the biggest environmental changes to their business, we would incentivise them, so the carrot, with a big mob of customers. So at a given time, we would actually mob their store with a big mob of customers and in a sense creating a win-win situation. So this really made me start to realise, hey, we can create this win-win for not only business, but for the environment. So it's kind of like the opposite of a boycott, I suppose, in that sense. So that was Carrot Mob. And then that led me on to, throwing myself more into this space, speaking to different people. And one person who I spoke with, Kai from Small Giants, some of you might know Kai, This was back 8 years ago when I was really out there trying to learn. And he drew up this graph, and look, this probably isn't exactly it, but this is what I took away from it. So it's something like, explaining the space out there in terms of the different organisations and how the different organisations are trying to have impact. So we've got, down at one end, we've got our activists. Up on the other end here, we have government, who are ideally out there trying to help us. We also have not-for-profits, clearly with cause at their heart, out there trying to make that difference and have an impact. And also amongst all of this, which is probably, I might even make it maybe a little bit bigger than government, is business. And the way that business, has been having a positive impact over the decades has been through corporate social responsibility. And so a lot of that sort of funding is coming down to the not-for-profits. But there's only so much the not-for-profits can do. They rely on this philanthropic support. And I guess it really twigged for me here. I'm like, business has so much power. And I believe in harnessing that power for good. And that, I guess is another piece of my worldview here. Business as a force for good. And in amongst, this time of conversations and connecting with people, I came across the concept of B Corp, which for me just provided that sophisticated framework of how businesses can be used as a force for good. So I'm a massive advocate of B Corp. It just allowed me to have more of a dialogue of what it means. So I'm really passionate. I really believe that we can use business as a force for good to make serious impact on the challenges that we have in our world. So all of that from this humble bag of carrots. Next up is this little Simpsonized character. This is Dr. Amantha Imber, who is the CEO and founder of Inventium. So as I mentioned before, Inventium is where I used to work just before taking on the challenge of EnviroDNA. And at Inventium, I got exposed to the world of innovation. I learnt about how important innovation is for organisations and for the world. Just how quickly our industries are moving, how quickly the world is moving. If we're not innovating, we're going to be left behind. There's a quote out there, innovate or die, basically. So that really, I guess, is something that I've been working with over the last 3 years with Inventium. Had the opportunity to learn about the science behind innovation and creativity and work with people to give them tools to be able to innovate more effectively. And so for me, from this experience, I've learnt, and what I believe is that innovation is critical. So innovation is critical not only for business, obviously, but in terms of how we're going to be solving the challenges that we face in everyday society and for our environment. We need to be changing how we're doing things. We need to be working with and collaborating with different people. We need to be bringing in new perspectives and changing it up. So in a nutshell, that's my worldview. 3 key things that I really believe in and that help to shape my why. And I found this a really useful exercise actually, because it just allowed me to reconnect with what that why is, that kind of, fire in the belly. And it also, for you, I don't know where everyone's at, but some of you might be working in a job that maybe doesn't strongly connect with your why. And I believe that we should be dictated by what we're really passionate about. So, to that point, when this opportunity came along for EnviroDNA, approached by these 2 guys, do you want to come and partner with us, make this happen? It's obviously risky to do that, but I couldn't say no. It was all about really getting my hands dirty with trying to shape a business and create and lead a business that's used as a force for good. It was about having a positive impact directly on the environment. While I felt I was having a positive impact at Inventium through working with people, I really am so passionate about this, and this was a great opportunity to reconnect with that for me. And of course, it was an opportunity, and still is an opportunity, to dive into the space of innovation and leading that in this particular area of the environment and the challenges that the environment has. So that is what, I guess, led me to making this decision. I now want to move on to the second part of my talk, which is, I guess, mapping out EnviroDNA's business model and giving you a tool that you might like to use as you map out your organisations. And I want to start the conversation by looking at the definition of innovation. So innovation's a really, it's a really hot word, buzzword, and it can be quite a fluffy concept because it does get thrown around a lot, just like the word sustainability. So a definition that I love, which is Inventium's definition of innovation, is change that adds value. 4 simple words, so it's really easy to remember. I love it because it's very broad. It encompasses not only breakthrough disruptive innovation, but it also encompasses small or incremental changes that we're making. It encompasses not only technology type innovation, which we immediately think about when we think of innovation, but it also encompasses service innovation, marketing innovation, internal process innovation, or how we're solving our challenges in society type innovation. Finally, the word value. So I'm going to, running out of board space, but I'll pop it just here. So change that adds value. The word value is really important because we don't want to just be changing for change's sake. We don't want to just be innovating for innovation's sake, right? So it's thinking about what value will this change create. And from my world at Inventium, I was working a lot with business. I was also working with not-for-profits as well, but typically the value was around the business's bottom line. So what value was that bringing back to the business? But the way that I love to break this down is thinking of it from a triple bottom line approach. So the business value, the value to people in the organisation or the community, and the environment. So that's how I believe we should be looking at innovation. And I think we've got a great opportunity to be, capturing this in this concept of business as a force for good and social enterprise, and making sure that we're ticking off on all 3 of these when we're thinking about how we're developing our business. And I have no doubt that everyone in the room and listening at home, you will be very good at thinking about the value that you're creating for people, if that's at the heart of what you're doing, or the value that you're creating for the environment. Your next challenge is to be thinking about, what about the business value? How are you making sure that your efforts in having these really positive impacts are actually sustainable, that you're able to generate funds that allow you to have that great impact? So I want to take you through a really quick tool, which is a business and innovation tool to help you, I guess, work through that and think about what that looks like for your business. Has anyone used the business model canvas? Okay, so about 1/3 of the room. Excellent. I'm going to take you through EnviroDNA's business model, just to bring it to life as a bit of a case study. And I'll also play a video. Now, just before it plays, George from Spark Strategy, is George here? No. Following up from this talk, George is also going to be taking you through an approach to developing a business model. So hopefully this helps to complement his talk as well. But just to introduce the business model canvas for those of you who don't know.
An organisation's business model can be described with 9 basic building blocks: your customer segments, your value proposition for each segment, the channels to reach customers, customer relationships you establish, the revenue streams you generate, the key resources and key activities you require to create value, the key partners, and the cost structure of the business model. But it's not sufficient to just enumerate the 9 building blocks. What you really want to do is to map them out on a pre-structured canvas. This is what we call the business model canvas. The a tool that helps you map, discuss, design, and invent new business models. Let's briefly go through the 9 building blocks, starting with the customer segments. These are all the people or organizations for which you're creating value. This includes simple users and paying customers. For each segment, you have a specific value proposition. These are the bundles of products and services that create value for your customers. The channels describe through which touchpoints you're interacting with customers and delivering value. The customer relationships outline the type of relationship you're establishing with your customers. The revenue streams make clear how and through which pricing mechanisms your business model is capturing value. Then you need to describe the infrastructure to create, deliver, and capture value. The key resources show which assets are indispensable in your business model. The key activities show which things you really need to be able to perform well. The key partners show who can help you leverage your business model, since you won't own all key resources yourself, nor will you perform all key activities. Then once you understand your business model's infrastructure, you'll also have an idea of its cost structure. So with the business model canvas, you can map out your entire business model in one image. This works for startup entrepreneurs just as well as for the most senior executives.
Cool, so that's just an introduction to the business model canvas for those of you who haven't seen it. And the man behind it is a person called Steve Blank. He's basically like the godfather of lean startup methodology. And the business model canvas is one that would have to be one of the most widely used modern day business tools. And it's just growing in popularity. And I've found it really useful as I've delved into EnviroDNA and starting to map, well, what is our business around this really interesting and innovative technology? And do we have a business around it? Is there an opportunity that we have here? So I'm going to really quickly, as a bit of a case study, and to then use it to help illustrate where I've had some challenges, I'm going to quickly take you through a high-level look at our business model. So in terms of our value proposition, what we offer to our clients is the opportunity to do monitoring of biodiversity and species and essentially the environment better than what they have been able to do before. And we do that via eDNA species detection services. We offer these services to our target market who are environmental managers. So these are people in organisations that are responsible for looking after the environment. So places like Melbourne Water, for example, catchment management authorities, marine parks, all of those kinds of people that are out there and have that job of looking after the environment. In terms of how we connect and reach our customers, for us it's a direct relationship. So it's through phone and email. For you in your business, you actually might have an online platform where you're selling your products or your services. For us, it's about one-on-one client relationships. Having that personal relationship is really important to our business model. And so we need to be thinking about how we do that, how we resource that, how we, have customers leaving with a really positive experience that they go and share it through word of mouth. And in terms of how all of this works together to create the dollars, what we're looking at here is delivering projects. So we don't have products at the moment, but we offer services. So we offer these eDNA species detection services, and we work with our clients to develop up a project, and then we go and deliver on that project for them that answers the key questions that they have. So that's our revenue stream. And we're looking at how we might be able to create some more revenue streams. Now, this is the value side of the business model canvas, how we're looking to create value. And this is sort of like, you can think of this as the back end of the business. And what are the other ingredients in your business that's going to help make this happen? So in terms of key activities, we have project delivery activities. So this is actually us going out in the field, collecting water samples. It's taking it to the lab and processing those water samples in the lab and using eDNA methods and writing reports, etc. We also need to do a lot of R&D because this is a space that there's so much happening. There's so much exciting technology coming out. There's possibilities, for example, of being able to go out in the field and put something in the water and get a real-time analysis of what species are in that waterway. So at the moment, we're sort of taking the samples back to the lab and processing, but there's technology starting to come out like that. So we need to know about what that is and how we're going to incorporate it. Is it going to give quality, scientifically rigorous outcomes? There's a lot to be thinking about, as well as trying to deliver and, get revenue to help support these activities. We have to market. So we have to think about how we're really, reaching our customer segment, how we're attracting their attention, and, that's been challenging for me, and I'll talk about that shortly. In terms of our key resources, people are really important to us. So everyone that we have working there is basically a PhD. So they have really highly technical scientific skills, and that's a challenge as well. We can't just easily recruit people willy-nilly. We have to be really planned in our approach and find those gold people. Lab space is also something that's really a key resource for us. And then moving into our costs that ideally, aren't as much as our revenue streams. So we've got equipment and supplies. So our lab equipment, that requires investment. And the supplies for our ongoing, consumables for conducting these experiments and tests. We've got our marketing costs, and we've got our people costs as some key kind of cost centres. And in terms of key partners, our suppliers are really important because, we outsource a little bit of our process. So we have to have a good relationship with our suppliers, and we have to, be aiming to get as cheap a supply as possible through bulk orders and things like that. So that's what our business model looks like. And I've found this business model canvas really useful because it allows you to paint, all the ingredients visually, and allows you to have a conversation with, I've found it, useful to have a conversation with others in the team to start thinking about, okay, well, what could be another revenue stream? Maybe we could have a water sample kit, that we can send out, and managers can actually use the water sample kit themselves and send it back to the labs for us. We don't have to go out and do that. And that could be an actual product. So therefore, we can then start thinking, well, what does that mean in terms of costs, and what resources would we need to do that? So it's just a really nice visual way of having discussions, building a common language, and starting to innovate and challenge, and making sure it's a bit of a reality check. Do we have a business model here to have the impact that we want to be having? So some of, I guess, the challenges we've had as a business I've touched on a little bit. R&D, that's a challenge for us because we have to balance our time with delivering projects and just getting out there and delivering with the science and technology that we have, but we also have to keep abreast of everything that's going on, and we have to be making decisions about what technologies we might want to be investing in. And further, just recently, we started thinking more deeply about how do we protect our IP and what can be protected. So this is like a whole other ballgame for me. I've never dealt with patents before. Is this something relevant for the business? I don't know. I have to work all that kind of thing out. Then marketing. So reaching out, and that can be, I guess, challenging because they're quite specific people that we're targeting, at least initially. We've got other opportunities for other markets, but for now, this is what we're looking at. And for example, what we did last week, or actually it was this week, my gosh, my brain. It's been a busy week. We ran an event which really pushed me out of my comfort zone because I don't really connect. I've never connected in this industry before. This is a brand new industry for me, really. And we invited people to this event. So it was a bit of an experiment. Are people going to come? We called it a science meets industry event, talking all things eDNA in waterways. So we sent out an invite, and we took a lean startup approach. We sent out an invite before we even decided what the event would involve. We sent it out to 20 people who we thought would be most interested and most likely to attend something like this, where we maybe already had a connection with them. And we sat back and waited. Would people go sign up on their email and send through their details and say, yep, we want to come along? And we got enough people to suggest to us that this is worthwhile running, that we have interest there. So we ended up having 10 people coming from different catchment management authorities, Melbourne Water, EPA Victoria, for example, and an industry body. So I was really excited. And then the next part of the experiment was actually, will they turn up? You know, it's one thing to say, yes, I sign up, but it's really in the behaviour. Will they actually turn up? That's the real test. And we had them all turn up except for one. So we had 90% success rate there. And we ran through our event, this Science Meets Industry event. And we used it as an opportunity to understand more about our customers, because in this space and the people that I'm working with, they're very focused on the science. They're very passionate about the science, and they're very technical in their thinking. The thing that I'm trying to bring to the party is people. Let's actually get to know the customer and what is it that they need? What does the industry need? So that we can best shape the development of this science and our offerings to best meet that. So we used this event not only as an opportunity to help explain what eDNA is and answer people's questions, but we also workshopped challenges that these people have when it comes to monitoring. So I found it a really good experience, really worthwhile, and it's inspired us to run some more Science Meets Industry events, which could even go more broadly than eDNA specifically. So they're just a couple of, I guess, business type things that we've been thinking about. The big thing that also is around people and what our HR, I guess, plan is there, and lab space. At the moment, we're actually working at Melbourne Uni's lab spaces, but that can't go on, you know, we're going to grow and we're not going to be able to make that happen. So we have to make a decision. Are we willing to go and invest in our own lab space? So that's something that that we're currently considering at the moment. And I want to just quickly share with you, I guess, some more personal challenges that I've had coming into this world, and some of the learnings. So first one is around it's not going to stick, there we go. So not knowing the science, I've found that quite hard coming into this space. Because these people that we're connecting with, you know, they know the science a little bit, and they're looking to us as being the science experts. And I'm the one who's the people person on the phone talking to people, but I don't know all the science. And so I found that really quite challenging. It did knock my confidence here and there, and, you know, I always felt out of my comfort zone making calls, but I've worked out my place now. So my place is my place is helping to apply the science. That's what I'm about. And so now I can more clearly articulate that to the people that I'm working with. I'm not pretending to be the expert, but I'm pretending to be I am the expert in understanding customer needs, and that's where I fit in. So that was a bit of a journey that I went through. Getting bogged down in planning. So when I first started, the first couple of months, I really spent sort of mapping out, you know, what's this business about, doing this sort of business model canvas stuff. You know, what's our marketing going to be for the next 12 months? And I was really conscious of not getting bogged down in planning, because coming from my innovation background, I know how important it is to get out of the building. We could plan for 6 months, have our 25-page business plan, get out there, and the customers don't respond. What a waste of time. So I had this in my mind, but I still felt this sense of, oh, I just want to think about it a bit more. So I found that, you know, I was getting bogged down, even though I knew that you need to get out of the building as soon as possible. Making connections in a new industry, which I guess somewhat relates to not knowing the science. This was a whole new industry for me. And I was sitting down one day and I drew a little picture of how I was feeling. And that was me as a little stick figure down here, a big brick wall right in front of me, and all these people over here that I knew were in the industry that I needed to connect to, but I just felt like, oh, where do I even start? I don't know anyone. What do I bring to the table for them? You know, how do I start conversations? What conferences do I go to? It was just a sort of but you just start somewhere. And I found that over the last, couple of months, the more I've been connecting with people, the more it starts to open up doors, the more confidence I get. So for example, I went to this conference that was called the Australian Society of Limnology. So limnology is a thing. It is the study of rivers and waterways. Okay, so this was a very scientific conference. Everyone there was a scientist. And here comes Helen rocking along, feeling like the biggest intruder in the world. And I was there to try and learn, but also trying to connect with people. So I guess there the moral of the story was for me to just continuously push myself out of my comfort zone and not be afraid that if I'm not the scientist, it doesn't matter, because the role that I'm playing is to help apply this great science that all these great people are working on. So I guess the moral for me was finding my place. So some of my learnings, which I've just probably harped on about, is connect with people all the time. I'm a people person, I suppose, so this works for me. The more people I'm connecting with, the more I'm feeling motivated, the more I'm feeling confident. And, getting bogged down in planning, as soon as I got out and I started connecting with people, the better I felt. Keep pushing out of my comfort zone is a big thing. I don't want to, even though it's easy to maybe, oh, yep, I like sitting down for a whole day and planning things out, it's comfortable to do that, really. So for me, it's just going to be constantly trying to think about what's that next event where I feel like the intruder, for example, and how do I continuously keep getting out and pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And finally, ensuring a sense of progress has been really important to me. And I realised, because I was feeling it when I was getting bogged down in my planning and, having weeks where I'm like, I just was like, am I doing the right thing? I'm not feeling like I'm kicking goals, and having those periods of time. And it reminded me of this research that I read by Carol Dweck, who's a psychologist. And she did this study, which was about what are the key factors in workplaces that motivate employees. So she did this big study that involved not only managers, but also hundreds of employees, and got them to keep journals of how they were feeling through different days during the week. And when you think about a workplace, there could be a number of things that add to an employee feeling good and feeling motivated. You could have reward and recognition type things. You could have, how challenging is their role and what type of work are they doing? Who is their manager? You could have a whole range of things that could add to their motivation. And the number one thing that was most important to employee motivation was having a sense of progress. So having a manager that helped to remove roadblocks, or being able to get over those blocks so that they could have that sense of progress, that's when employees felt the best. That's when they felt like the most engaged and that they were having impact. And I really resonated with that, or I have over the last 8 months. So for me, it's how do I make sure that I always have a sense of progress? So it's recognising the small wins. We had our first inquiry that came from someone finding us on Google. So we had a phone call. So we're like, yes, high five that. So it's recognising the small wins. It's recognising that for me, sometimes you're not always going to be feeling like you've got the high five movements. And that's okay, because as long as I'm continuously pushing myself out of my comfort zone and connecting with people, it's going to keep happening. But sometimes you'll have a week where maybe it doesn't feel like it is. So yes, the sense of progress I guess is the point I'd love to end on, because I think that anyone can connect with that kind of point in whatever job you're doing, whatever business you might be running. Having that sense of progress is so important. So thank you for listening to me and my story, and I hope that you took at least one thing that can help you in your journey. And I'd love to know if you do have any questions or comments or anything at all, since I've been talking now for 30 minutes at least. Oh, thanks.
How often do you review your business plan?
So this business model canvas, I set out to create a one-page business plan, and that turned into a two-page business plan with this attached. So we went out, I wanted to review it every month with the two other guys, and I have to admit, we haven't been doing that. So we've just been getting kind of lost in making it all happen. But we've just booked in monthly meetings now to connect as a team and to review where we're at in terms of not only our business plan and, we set 5 goals. We didn't want to overcomplicate things. What are just the 5 goals that we want to achieve this 12 months? We didn't do a 5-year business plan. We recognise we're small. We want to be nimble. It might change. We don't know. So we're going to be reviewing that every month. But admit, that's only just started. You got to throw it, Raph.
Yeah. Worry about the bottles.
I know.
Where's the balance in protecting your IP versus letting it free and having a positive impact on the world?
Yeah, that is really interesting. And something that I guess we've been thinking about, for example, our water sampling technique that we developed is something that technically you could say is IP, because it's a really special way of getting the water out. It's actually quite simple with these little filters and whatnot. And that's now out in the public eye. So there's a video of it, you can see it online, and I guess the decision was just made, well, really, anyone can really do that. And we just had to make the decision of where our most valuable IP lies, which is in the database that we have of different species DNA sequences, because that's a really powerful database for us to be able to detect what species are where that other people would have to take a lot of time to develop. So we just have worked out that's our most likely our most valuable piece. But I get what you mean, yeah, balancing, you know.
If you gave that database to everybody and said, find out what's out there, you might actually change the world quicker.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess that's something that we do need to think about. And we haven't yet, I guess, got to that point, because we're only 8 months in, really. But I think that that's something we should think about. At the same time, though, balancing it with, we do at the end of the day need to be able to fund what we're doing. So yeah, I think that's a really good question for me to think about.
In your triple bottom line, which is the real priority and which are the necessary evils?
So, yeah, that's interesting. I would say what I'm most passionate about is the environmental space. So for me, that's the real priority. If we're not having impact on the environment, then us 3 leaders, our team of leaders, we're not going to feel good. We're not going to feel connected to what we're doing. It's not going to align with our purpose as human beings, through our worldviews. And the business side of things is what allows us to continue to have that impact. We also care about people. I've talked a lot about the environment, but I'm a real believer in creating a great place to work. So for me, that's how we're thinking about that aspect of triple bottom line. How are we creating a place that people love working, where they develop and grow in their careers, that they feel like, they're strongly connected to their worldviews when they're at work as well.
So if a new technology came out that didn't involve water sampling, say it was heat scanning or something like that, would you abandon what you're doing to have a bigger environmental impact, or would you keep going because you've got a great business that's making money?
So I guess the way that we're looking at it is, we're about improving environmental monitoring. So we're open to, going with the tide of technology and ideally setting that tide. So yeah, I think my answer would be that we would want to be continuously innovating and thinking about how we continuously have a better impact. And that might mean bringing in new and different technologies. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, that's really good.
Have we got any online ones, Julia?
Yes, we do. It's been a little quiet so far. I think people are still waking up. So if you can hear me, please do ask some questions. But luckily, we have a colleague somewhere else who was like, oh, I've got some questions. Let's get it started. So we have a question from Avery. How do you think about getting up to speed on something you don't know a lot about, so I guess the science, but need to be able to communicate about customers?
How do I feel about it?
To customers about, yeah.
How do I feel?
And how do you deal with it, I guess?
Yeah.
I guess that's something you kind of covered. She may have asked that before you got to that point.
Yeah, maybe because there's a delay.
Yeah.
So, well, basically, in a nutshell, I've felt challenged by it because I have felt a bit of imposter syndrome around that. And I have found it, I have to ask these guys, these scientists, men and women, a lot of what feels like dumb questions. But they're just so so highly technical in their thinking that I have to keep reminding them that our customers don't know this. Like, I'm asking questions that a lot of customers are going to have. So I guess I've felt that I've pestered a lot of the scientists that I work with a lot with these basic questions. And I have felt senses of being that imposter syndrome side of things. But as I mentioned earlier, you know, I've found my place in terms of my strength is helping to apply that science and understanding people and customer needs.
I've got one more as well. What tips do you have for making the move from a job to running a business?
Ooh, what tips? Well, something that I think, you know, I feel really lucky because the two guys that I've partnered with are actually two, funnily enough, they used to be my bosses in a previous job. So I used to work for them in this other environmental consultancy that EnviroDNA is actually spun out of. And so I've maintained a connection with them over the years. And so I already had this kind of trust relationship. I knew what they're about. All three of us know what different strengths we bring to the party. And so I feel like I've had quite a lucky, I guess, intro into the world of managing a business because I have two great supporting partners that complement my strengths. And we still feel like we're kind of bush accountants, you know, trying to work it all out together. So I think my tip would be if you can find people that you can do it with in terms of, you know, partner with and grow the business together, because I think that not only helps with complementing the skills that you do and don't have, but it also helps with that sense of progress and motivation. Because you can pick up the phone and go, oh, I'm wondering what to do. What do you think? I'll do this. Okay, great, let's roll. And so you can more quickly remove the roadblocks that you might feel if you're in a team.
I'm just looking at your customer segments, and I think my 6 and 8 year old would be a perfect customer segment. So are there ideas to go into schools and? Yes.
Yep, so that's good to hear. Another area that we're playing in at the moment is citizen science, which really aligns with, you know, kids and schools and just people that want to know what's in their backyard. So there's, you know, we're looking at the possibility and the need for that. It's an area that I need to, you know, I guess more officially look into. But with any project that we're doing with our environmental managers, we're talking to them about, do you want to have a citizen science component where we actually go out with locals in your area or connect with your local schools? So my colleague Josh just recently went out and did a couple of platypus talks at local primary schools and then took them down to their waterway and they did water sampling together. So we're sort of doing it with our project delivery, and I think there could be an opportunity to think of another revenue stream about, you know, an at-home kit to test your local waterway or for schools or something. So yeah, love that, but have to work out what the opportunity is.